Good morning all. This is Padmavati, lecturer in botany, Government Degree College, Tadepalligudam. Today we are discussing about the topic biotic factors. Biotic factors are the living things in an ecosystem. These living things interact with each other and they affect one another. Any organism does not live alone and it lives with a number of organisms. So, there will be interaction between the organisms. In these interactions, the species gets affected and some of the species does not get affected by other organisms, that is called mutualism. These interactions between the living things can be classified into two types. One is positive interaction and the other is negative interaction. In positive interaction, we discuss about mutualism and commensalism, whereas in negative interactions, we discuss about exploitation, amensalism and competition. What are positive interactions? In positive interactions, when the species interact with each other, there is a positive effect on the other organisms or other species. These interactions are called positive interactions. That means, in positive interactions, one or both the species get benefited. That type of interactions are called positive interactions. These positive interactions may be regarding food, shelter or substratum. And these positive interactions, sometimes they may be temporary positive interactions or sometimes they may be permanent interactions. That means the species, they live together and they interact each other and they affect each other continuously, permanently. That is permanent interaction. And sometimes they may be facultative, depending upon the situation. They may be facultative interactions or they may be obligate, that is necessary completely for their life. So interactions may be obligate or facultative. If you come to positive interactions, these positive interactions include mutualism and commensalism. If you take mutualism is a type of interaction in which both the species get benefited by their interactions. This mutualism includes pollination by animals, dispersal of seeds and fruits, myrmecophily, lichens, symbiotic nitrogen fixation, mycorrhizae, zoochlorellae and zooxanthellae. If you take each one of this, the first one includes pollination by animals. Here, the plants are pollinated in cross pollinations. These animals help them in their pollination mechanism. So here the example in this picture, if you see in this picture, the insect is getting nectar or pollen from the flower for its food, whereas it is helping the plant in pollination mechanism, in cross pollination mechanism. So the plant is getting benefited and the insect is also getting benefited. And if you come to the second picture, here the dispersal of seeds and fruits. The seeds and fruits of plants, some of the plants are dispersed with the help of animals or birds or human beings. Here in this picture, the seeds have some clinging, some hook-like structures. These hook-like structures get attached to the bodies of the animals or to the clothes of the human beings, and these seeds get dispersed. So it helps, so the animals help them in the dispersal of the seeds. And if you go to myrmecophily, here in myrmecophily, The ants live on the plants. For example, if you take the example of Acacia spherocephala, here the first picture, the thorns that are there, the ants live in the hollow spaces of these thorns. So the ants get shelter for their life, and they also get food materials from the plant. Whereas the plant gets protected by the ants from other insects and pests. So there is a mutual benefit. And if you come to lichens, in lichens there will be two species living together, algae and fungi. The algal species by photosynthesis prepares food materials and supplies it to the fungus, whereas the fungal component gives shelter and also gives a shelter to the algal group. So there is a mutual benefit. And the next example is a symbiotic nitrogen fixation. A good example for symbiotic nitrogen fixation is the symbiotic relation between the root nodules of legumes and the rhizobium bacterium. The rhizobium bacterium lives in the root nodules of legume roots. It fixes the atmospheric nitrogen and supplies it to the plant, whereas the plant provides food material and shelter to the bacterium. So there is a mutual benefit to both the bacterium and the legume plant. And next one, if you go to mycorrhizae, the example of mycorrhizae, there is the fungi living in close association with the roots of higher plants. This association is called mycorrhiza. So fungus provides the moist environment that is necessary for the plant. It supplies the water to the plant, whereas the plant provides the shelter to the fungus. And in Zoochlorellae and Zooxanthellae, the algal contents, the algal components, they live in the body parts of the protozoans and they supply food materials to the protozoans. The protozoans provide shelter to them. So there is again a mutual benefit between the two interacting organisms. So this kind of mutual benefited species, the interaction between them is called mutualism. And if you come to the second type of positive interaction, that is commensalism. In commensalism, one of the species gets benefited, whereas the other species does not get any benefit or nor it is harmed. The examples for commensalism include lions and epiphytes. If you take the example of lions, the creepers or the lions, they take the support of woody trunks of the large trees to get exposed to the sunlight, whereas the tree does not get any benefit nor it is harmed by the lions. So there is benefit to one species and the other species is neutral. And the second example, if you come to epiphytes, epiphytes live on the trunks of large trees. They attach to the branches of these large trees by clinging roots. They get shelter on the branches of these trees, so they are benefited. The epiphyte here is benefited and the tree does not get any benefit nor it is harmed. So these two lions and the epiphytes are the good examples for commensalism, in which one species is benefited and the other species remains neutral. Next, if you come to the negative interactions include three types of interactions. One is exploitation, the second one is amensalism, and the third one is competition. If you come to exploitation, it includes parasitism and predation. In exploitation, one species is benefited at the expense of the other. This exploitation includes parasitism and predation. In parasitism, one organism is benefited while harming the other. Example include ticks and fleas on animals. Here the ticks and fleas, they suck the blood of the animals, so the ticks are benefited, they get food. Whereas the animal is losing its blood, so it is harmed, or they cause some diseases to the animals, so the animal is harmed. In such a way, there is a benefit to one organism and harm to other organism in parasitism. Whereas in predation, one species often eats other species. So one is lost, whereas the other is benefited. This kind of negative interaction in exploitation is called predation. And if you come to amensalism and antibiosis, in amensalism, one species does not allow the other animals to grow near them. So, they produce some kinds of chemicals called allelochemicals which inhibit the growth of the other animals or which repel the other animals. This kind of interaction is called antibiosis or allelopathy also. The examples for this amensalism include bacteria, actinomycetes and fungi, and plants also. Here are some of the examples for plants which show amensalism. They produce some kind of chemicals as secondary substances. These chemicals does not allow some of the other species to grow near them. Here is the example of Croton banplandianum, and the other example here is Abutilon indicum. Here chlorella, which is an alga which produces some toxic compounds which are harmful to diatoms. In the same way, Tagetes is a plant which produces some of the toxic substances which act against nematodes. So, these are the plant species that are example for amensalism. And if you come to competition, the species compete, the organisms compete with each other either for food or for space or for light. And this competition includes either intraspecific competition or interspecific competition. In intraspecific competition, the individuals of the same species compete with each other. You may take the example of small plants growing under the shade of a large tree. They compete for food material, for space or for sunlight, and only some of them gets some of them grow, can be able to capable for taking that light or taking that food material, and only a very few grow, whereas the others perish. In interspecific competition, the individuals of different species, they compete with each other either for food or for space or for some other requirements. So this is a competition. So negative interactions here we have discussed are three types. They include exploitation, amensalism and competition. And positive interactions we have discussed about mutualism and commensalism. As a whole, if you take the interactions the biotic factors in an ecosystem, they interact with each other in a positive manner or in a negative manner. All these interactions are necessary for an ecosystem. These interactions are a necessary part of the ecosystem and they are helpful to balance the nature in an appropriate manner. So today is the topic we are concluding here. Thank you.